up, Buncombe? It's Abby, and today I am here with a special guest. We have Mike Magnanti, who is running for North Carolina GOP Vice Chair. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Raise a flag of liberty, the land of the free, rejecting tyranny.
So, a recent trend that we've had is I'm meeting people for the first time on the podcast. So I'm getting to know you as everyone else is getting to know you. So can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Mike Magnanti. Like you said, I'm running for the vice chair for the North Carolina Republican Party. Um, in my real life, I have an insurance agency in Oxford, North Carolina, which is in Granville County. I'm the outgoing chair for the Granville County Republican Party and the outgoing first vice chair for the 13th Congressional District. And from where I'm sitting and based on my experience, I think our party is really lacking strong leadership, and that's what I intend to bring as the vice chair.
What are you seeing as the biggest struggles right now in the NCGOP?
Well, I mean, I think from a macro point of view, it is about leadership or lack thereof. We've got I believe weak leadership, and because of that, that just creates chaos. There, I've been around to a lot of county conventions and a lot of district conventions, and a lot of them are on fire. There's lots of infighting, there's lots of attacking, and that is, I believe, a product of weak leadership, and so. There's also a lack of transparency at the NCGOP. We don't know what's happening with as far as finances are concerned, and that doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything nefarious happening, but it does mean that we're not being told what is going on. And so that is a big problem for me, and that will be one of my areas of focus. Another issue that we had, especially in this last election, besides losing the General Assembly, the supermajority in the General Assembly, besides that, our statewide candidates, especially Auditor Bolek and Hal Weatherman, who ran for lieutenant governor, and Dan Bishop, who was running for attorney general, and Michelle Morrow, who ran for superintendent of public instruction, they had nobody at the NCGOP that was responsible to them, that was their point of contact. And for that reason, I'm not necessarily faulting anybody. I'm not saying that there's somebody that didn't do their job. What I'm saying is there was nobody assigned to do that function. And so it is a natural addition to the vice chair's role to be the point of contact for our council of state members and for our statewide candidates, because they're already responsible to be in contact with the RNC committeemen and RNC committeewoman to be their point of contact. So just to add those people is kind of a natural expansion of the responsibility of the vice chair, which I not only intend to do but have already started doing.
So you're talking about being cohesive and infighting and things. So how are you going to work as vice chair to help the 14 districts work together and kind of mesh back together again?
So I'm glad you asked it. That's a good question. I think that is a symptom of weak leadership, and one of the things that I believe that you need to do as the leader is you need to nurture those relationships, and I believe that nurturing those relationships. Not only begins with transparency, but transparency begets accountability, accountability begets trust, and trust begets unity. So we've heard a lot about unity, and everybody is saying we have to be unified, we have to be unified, and I agree we do, but how do we become unified? And I believe that there are two ways. One is through transparency and the other is through nurturing relationships. So these people know me kind of in a cursory way. They don't know me as a leader, and they don't know me personally. Not all of them do, but they will, because I will make sure to nurture that relationship, and it will take a little while. It won't happen overnight, but what winds up happening is when they do get to know you and they realize that you are there to help them, that you're not trying to hurt them, that they can trust you. Once that happens, and that will take a while for me to earn that, but it will be easier for them to come to me with an issue that they may have with somebody or someone else, and that will make it easier for me to kind of mend that fence. And that's one of the things that I have done throughout my professional life. I worked in restaurants for 26 years. My job was to take over underperforming restaurants, and ultimately every time I did it, I did it many times in multiple states. It was always a matter of leadership and a matter of trust. And so when you don't trust the leader and you don't trust what the leader is doing, that makes you uneasy, and it creates an uncomfortable, untrustworthy environment amongst the rank and file. So that would, so the, not to give away all my secrets, but the way that you would do that is by nurturing a relationship with those district chairs. That's how, and that it's not going to happen overnight, but that's how I would go about doing that.
I love that. So the super majority's at risk. How do you think that we can win that and keep that?
So the supermajority not only is at risk of us losing more seats, but the supermajority is gone. We don't have it.
Oh,
One of the races that we lost was District 32, which is Granville County and a portion of Vance County. So the fact is that in Granville County, in 2024, the candidate won Granville County by 2,400 votes, and he lost Vance County by 2,700 votes. And so that means that Vance County is where the struggle is Granville County will deliver for the candidate. And how do we help them? Well, there's a couple of ways. And one of the great things that's happened that is new is that we have taken over the state board of elections. Not taken over, it is, we are now responsible for the state board of elections, and we are in the majority, and we are also responsible and in the majority for our 100 counties. So one of the things we can do in our 100 counties is we can take a look at where are our polling places geographically and where are specifically our early voting sites. And if you look at them, you can look at them statistically to find out where they are geographically and who is the majority voter in that area. And I know you'll find this to be a shock, but almost all of them are in a heavily Democrat area. And so one of the things we have to do, like for example, Buncombe is challenging because it is a bluer county, but there's probably a redder or less blue polling place precinct.
mhm.
And so that's where we should put the early voting site. So if we do that in all 100 counties, just look at geographically logistically, where are we putting our early voting sites? I believe that could have enough of an impact to swing certainly our votes in the county, at the county level, school board, county commission. And overall, there's a potential that we could swing a vote like a gubernatorial election, like an AG election. So it is, while it is a county centric strategy, it will have a statewide impact. And so that would be the approach that, and I've spoken with Auditor Bullock about that, and he agrees with me. We've looked at the statistics, and he agrees. So I believe that that's going to be an approach that Auditor Bullock take, and he's going to need help with that. And that's one of the suggestions that I have made, and that I will talk with each county chair about when elected, and each district chair, and that will be our strategy. We need to check out, where are we putting this stuff? Where are we? And I believe that not, maybe not every county will have to move, but certainly some will. And so I think that will have an impact on those elections. So that'd be one strategy that I would use for the supermajority, to try to regain that supermajority. And then another strategy would be to find the races that are vulnerable, and to put all of our resources, both not only financial resources, but also human resources, in that area. So for example, like I had said, Vance County is a struggle for us. And Vance County, we had a significant loss, but we had some significant gains in Granville County, and there are other neighboring counties where we did pretty well. So we might want to take some of the folks from those areas and bring them to Vance County to kind of shore up the Vance County Republican Party and give them the human resources help as well as financial help from the NCGOP. Perhaps it's not in direct donations, but it could be in advertisement. It could be in get out the vote effort, stuff like that. And so that did not happen in this past election.
Correct.
And so I believe that needs to be the focus. So what happened in the 2024 election? What the Democrats did statewide is they actually only ran about 6 races. And they concentrated all of their efforts in 6 races, and they won all 6. And so the issue is we need to kind of say, okay, where are we vulnerable and where can we make gains? And we need to focus on the few that we actually can win, and we need to sink it all in there. It doesn't mean we completely ignore everybody else, but for example, District 13, the congressional race in District 13, it's like an R10. So that's a pretty safe seat. Whereas in District 1, it may be like a D2. Well, we might be able to pick that one up. So we need to really focus on that race, and that's one congressional race. That's one. So not, Chuck Edwards out by you guys, he's an R95. You know what I mean? He's going to win. And so we need to be less concerned about Chuck, and we need to be more concerned about District 1, where we might be able to make a pickup. So that's the type of strategy. And we need to include our district chairs and our members of the operating committee, what is currently the central committee. We need to include them in that strategy because there's lots of talent around that table, and we need to utilize it, which we currently don't do. Again, that's leadership. So ultimately, it is about leadership, and that will permeate all things.
So here in Buncombe County, we don't have a single Republican in elected office right now. And our Buncombe County chairman is new. So what are you going to do as vice chair to help him and help us win some seats out here?
So the first thing that I would do is, again, this is about relationships, and we need to establish that relationship that we currently don't have. He's new, I'm new, so he we don't have that relationship. But one of the things that we would do is we would take a look at statistically where what precincts do we have in Buncombe County where we might be able to make some gains? And specifically Buncombe County, that's really one of the ones where we really want to take a close look and find out where are our early voting sites and where are our polling places in the precincts, because I believe that if we put them in the correct spot, the most advantageous spot for us, just like the Democrats have done, and kudos to them, that's what they did over the years. They put all the polling places in the most advantageous spots for them. And so we need to do that. That'll make an impact. And the other thing is we need for our county chairs to actively seek out good quality candidates that have their ears open and that are open to what is happening in their local communities. I don't know the answer to all those questions. That there are 100 counties, everyone's different,
Mm-hmm.
but we need to seek out candidates. And really nurture the county chair needs to nurture a relationship with that candidate, because when they do, the candidate is much more open to the county chair's advice in how the campaign is being run, who it is that we're talking to, how we're doing it, are we making buttons, what is the county doing to help the candidate, the county commission candidate or the school board candidate. And you might find one vulnerable opponent that you feel like, what, if we buckle down, we can beat this person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we should do. We should find that vulnerable one. We should run somebody that is a good quality candidate for us and get behind them and try our best. That's what we did in Granville County. We are very close to taking over not only the school board but also the county commission. One of the things we can do, like for example in Granville County, the school board races are during the primary, and that's not an accident. They're during the primary because there's less participation, and there's less participation, so the school board doesn't want to move it because they know that with more participation that the Republicans are probably going to win.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a nonpartisan race. So that would be another thing we have to look at. Is it a partisan race? Is it a nonpartisan race? And we may, I don't know, in Buncombe County, we may not want to make it a partisan race, but when is it? When is it being held? Is it during the general election or during the primary? And so that's all that type of analysis has to happen so that we can then say, okay, this is what we want to do. Having not one Republican is tough, and that's not something that'll change overnight.
Yeah. So, as I'm sure you know, there is a lot less participation in the midterm elections than there are in presidential elections. Do you have any wisdom, anything that you think we can do to help get more voters out and more Republicans involved in those elections?
Well, that's an excellent question. That is the magic bullet. It's getting out your base, and I I believe that there will be a strategy depending on who is at the top of the ticket. That might change the strategy. I believe that what we need to do is we need to have our chair and vice chairs at the state level be vocal, be visible, and be available for shows like this. To tell people, to get the message out that hey, in Buncombe County we've got these great candidates, and so to get them excited about the local candidates depending on who's on the top of the ticket and why this is important that they participate. What does it mean to them? And I believe that we have not really done that very well. Our messaging has been quiet and it's been weak. And I think that one of the things that we need to do is make it much more bold, much more visible, much more available. You need to see our faces all the time. And it doesn't necessarily mean I need to be in Asheville every day, but I do need to be available, and you need to be hearing about the value that we are offering and why the conservative point of view is the better point of view. The Democrats have really, really, they're doubling down on their crazy woke policies. Their whole agenda is against President Trump. They're not interested in doing anything positive. They're not interested in partnering. What they're interested in doing is defeating us. And so when common sense people, especially our unaffiliateds, which are the largest group that we have in our state, especially when they hear common sense, they when they hear it, they know it. And when they hear people that are not insulting them, and when they hear people that are not saying things like, we need to allow girls to change in front of boys for sports. And when they hear that, they know inherently that this is nuts. This is not the way that it's supposed to be. And so when they hear common sense, they know it. And I believe that we need to attract people. We have an opportunity right now because of Doge at the federal level, because of what's happening at the state level. They're essentially doging the state. We need to do the same thing with the NCGOP so that we can attract. We have an opportunity to attract more people than we've had since when Ronald Reagan was president. Our ranks should be swelling by the day, and they're not. And why is that? Well, I believe it's because we have weak leaders that are not bold and they're not visible and they're not really doing a good job at saying, this is what a conservative is. This is what pragmatic conservative leadership looks like. And this is how we hold each other accountable. And when that message gets out, that's a winning message every time. Every time it's tried, that's a winning message. But that message is not getting out. And like I said, I believe that our leaders need to be available. They need to be visible, and they need to be bold. And I think when we have that, then we swell our ranks.
There's a lot of controversy right now about the new plan of organization that's being proposed at the convention. How do you feel about it?
Mhm. So, in full disclosure, I am a member of that committee. So I am very much pro the plan of organization, and I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. Our current iteration, so first of all, it is not a rewrite like a lot of people are saying. What it is we took the current plan and reviewed the conflicts that are in it. So there's a lot of conflicts within the plan. The reason why that is because it's like a patchwork quilt that's been made over 20 years and written by 40 different people. And so that makes it there's internal conflict. So it makes it super hard to hold anybody accountable to it, because which section do you enforce? Which part of it is the one that rules? And so what we did is we got rid of all of the conflict and restructured it. It's very easy to search. It's very easy to find out what you're looking for. And that, for that reason alone, that is incredibly helpful, especially to a county chair or a district chair, to look at this and say, Well, where are the boundaries? And it's very easy to find them. Okay, so that's one thing that has happened. Another thing that has happened with this plan of organization, I actually have this written down. I'm gonna look at it. All right, so let me find where I wrote it all down. Okay. Um, it is it's a huge and impactful um thing. So one of the things that change that has been made is that the executive committee, instead of meeting twice a year, will have to meet 4 times a year, quarterly. Okay. So the executive committee is the ruling body of our party, of our state party. And the executive committee, because they only met twice a year, what winds up happening is the central committee winds up usurping a lot of authority that it doesn't have. And I'm not knocking them. It's actually out of necessity because somebody's got to make these decisions. And then what winds up happening is the members of the Central Committee wind up relinquishing their decision making authority that they didn't have in the first place to just a few people, the chair, maybe the executive director. And so nobody wants to make a decision. So what winds up happening is you have 3 or 4 people making decisions about the direction of our party. And it is not by committee of the represented delegates and the represented Republicans at the state level. So what we did is we said you got to meet quarterly, so it's more frequently, and the operating committee is going to meet every other month. Okay. And the state executive committee meeting has to be in the central part of the state. That's a huge thing. So that means that's like Durham, Greensboro, Iredell, you know what I mean? Like that, like 85 corridor, like around there. So this way, it's much more difficult to manipulate an executive committee meeting to get the outcome that you want. Okay. So another thing that we did that's a huge, huge thing was in the plan of organization, it says that if there's a vacancy at the state chair or state vice chair level, that the chair has to call a meeting within 60 days of the vacancy. Well, if you read what that says, the intent is first there would be a vacancy and then you would call a meeting. That's what a normal like person would think. But that's not what happened last time. What happened is the meeting was called, and at the meeting the chair resigned, where they quickly installed Jason Simmons as his replacement. And so the vice chair never had the opportunity to serve as the interim chair like it should be. And so there was a shorter period of time. So that means there was a shorter period of time, a much shorter period of time for us to really vet the candidates and choose. And so that has been changed in the new iteration. So we just added the word after. So now, if there is a vacancy, it would have to happen first, and then the meeting would be called, and then it would happen within 60 days of the vacancy. So there's things like that. There's lots of housekeeping things that we did. Uh, and then financial reporting. We put in the plan of organization that at the central committee meetings and at the state executive committee meetings, there has to be clear financial reporting because we want to know where are we getting the money, where's it coming from, who's spending it, and why. And I think those are reasonable questions to ask. And they go to transparency and, frankly, go to leadership. So I am for the new iteration of the plan of organization. Those are just a couple of things I cite. Um, I think that it helps out. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. The way that I describe it to people is a thoroughbred horse, a camel is a thoroughbred horse made by a committee.
Right.
So it is a committee, and so you have to give and take. But if you just the fact that we've eliminated the conflict, that's a reason to pass it right there. There's also going to be a model county plan that will make sure that there is no conflict between the counties and the state. That is a huge thing. So that makes it so much easier for the counties because the counties don't know that they're in conflict a lot of the times until somebody challenges it. And now their particular plan of organization has now gone to the committee where they now are told, well, you're in conflict. And so you have to resolve this conflict. And that creates, that creates animosity, that creates tension. And so I am for the new iteration of the plan of organization. We have over 50,000 man hours. This is a standing committee. That means the committee gets appointed and it stays. We started working on this iteration last April, and we've met every Wednesday, except for a couple in December and a couple of this month. But we've met every Wednesday to pour over, this plan. So I believe, out of respect for the members of the committee, we should pass the plan. It is not when you look at the current plan and when you look at the current iteration and when you look at the amended version is much more better. It's a much more cohesive document. It's much easier to read and it's much easier to implement. And for that reason alone, it needs to pass, I believe.
So I don't know if you are familiar with NC but this morning their chairman came out officially and is urging all of the NC TAR members to vote against, TAR members and their whoever, to vote against the plan. And I know most of them are not 18, so I know most of them can't even vote. But the fact that they're coming out against this, I just want to know what your thoughts are about that, because they're saying that the new plan of organization is taking away their seat at the table.
Well, that's just inaccurate. In fact, um, so so the the reason why the affiliate groups initially were removed, in this new iteration, the reason why they were removed was there's a couple of reasons. First of all, there's a members of the Central Committee didn't like the fact that the affiliate groups did not have to abide by the same rules as the district chairs. Okay, so there was a lady, Catherine Whitford. She ran for Congress. I think it was in '82 in Cabarrus County. I'm not Congress. She ran for state house, and she was the Young Republicans, I believe, chair, and she sat on the Central Committee. And she ran for House and didn't give up her Central Committee seat. And there were members on the Central Committee that said, "Hey, wait a second. You can't do that. You can't, if you're running for office, if you've announced, you automatically relinquish your seat on the Central Committee." Well, that is not the case. In our current iteration, the affiliate groups do not have to abide by the rules of our party. So let me get this straight, just so we're all clear. The affiliate groups, there's 8 of them. They sit on the governing body of our party and don't have to abide by the rules. That doesn't seem right to me. So that was one reason why they were removed, and the other was because of representation. And so this is what I mean. Each of our district chairs, we've got 14 of them. They represent about 850,000 Republicans. Okay, all of them are they're very close to the same number, not the exact same number, but very close. Right around there, right around 850,000. The largest affiliate group is the Federated Republican Women, and they represent 2,100. The Republican Hispanic Assembly, they have 7 or 8 chapters in the state, and they're hoping to have 10 by the end of the year. So I'm not suggesting, I'm not even certain that the Frederick Douglass Foundation is a Republican organization. I think they might be unaffiliated. So you have these people that are on the Central Committee, the operating committee of our party, the committee that makes the decisions about how our party moves forward, that don't have very much representation, that don't have very many chapters, and don't have to follow the rules. So that was the reason why. Okay. So we removed them. And then through negotiations with specifically the president of the Federated Republican Women, Kay Wilt, and Sandy Moyer, who is the chair or the president of the Republican National Assembly, uh, the North Carolina chapter of the Republican National Assembly, Hispanic Assembly. We discussed one of the things we wanted was them to change their rules, their bylaws that said that they would have to live under our plan of organization, which they're federated, so their national leadership said, no, we're not going to do that. So then the language you put in the new iteration says the individual agrees that if they're sitting on the operating committee, that they will live under the same rules as everybody else on the operating committee. So in other words, if they decide they want to run for House, they will automatically be removed. Okay. And so that was the offer, and they accepted that offer. They said, yeah, we can live with that. That's fine. And we'll support the plan. That was what they had said to us. If you put us back on and you give us a full vote on the executive committee, we will support the plan. That's what they said.
Mhm.
And so we did that. In fact, I was the member of the committee that made the motion to add the affiliate groups back on and give them the full vote on the executive committee. And I voted for that because that was the deal. And now they are still voting against the plan of organization. And they are saying that we tried to take them off. Well, yeah. I mean, we did try to take them off because they weren't following the same rules as us. They weren't subject to the same rules as everybody else. So why would you allow them to serve on the committee, on
Mhm.
the governing bodies of the party? Why? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So most people don't understand that this is why. It's not because we're mean and we don't like them. That's not it at all. It's not because they don't do anything. That's not the case. That's not it at all. And the other reason is their members already have representation. They live in North Carolina. They live in a district. They have a district chair. So they do have representation. Their district chair represents them. They're one of the 850,000. So now the members of this group have double representation. And so the Frederick Douglass Foundation, that has about 250 members, I don't mean to be picking on any one of them, but it's just the fact. They represent about 250 people. So you mean to tell me that somebody that represents 250 people should have the same input as somebody that represents 850,000? Well, I mean, I'm okay with it. I wasn't necessarily, you know, wanting them to be off. What I wanted was for them to live under the same rules as us. That's what I wanted,
Mhm.
and they agreed to that. So fine. Okay, so now they're back on. So I don't. I am very surprised at how they are still beating this drum as they want to remove us. It is disappointing that young man, I think his name is Caleb, right? I think it's very disappointing that he would say that because he knows that's not true. See, that's what I don't like, and I believe that's a symptom of weak leadership. See, I believe that the leadership should contact him and privately remind him that what he is saying is not true and it's misleading. And I think he should be reminded of that. And if that was happening, this type of thing would stop.
Mhm.
But it's not happening. And so that's weak leadership. So when we have weak leadership, this is what we get. This is not, I'll ask you, is this type of thing more conducive to unity or less conducive to unity?
Exactly.
It's less conducive.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why is it's because it is less transparent. It is specifically not transparent.
Mhm.
He is specifically telling something that he knows to not be true. That is not transparent. That's not good leadership. It's not strong leadership. So I'm disappointed in him that he would say that. I'm very disappointed. And when I see him, I'm going to tell him that I'm disappointed in him and why I'm disappointed in him. So I believe that for example, so this is what I'm talking about, leadership in action. So this past week, the chair of the Plan of Organization Committee, his house, a picture of his house was posted on Facebook. His address and his house was posted on Facebook. Now his address went out on an email that he sent out in support of the Plan of Organization. He has a large email list. He had ran for Congress at some point and he has like 11,000 people on his email list. And he sent out a supportive email to that email list. And on the bottom of the email, it had his address. And so there was somebody in the eastern part of the state that looked up his house, went to the GIS, found the tax value, found a picture of his house, and she posted it on Facebook. Well, for me, that's a bridge too far. Okay. You shouldn't post people's house on Facebook, where he lived, where his wife lives. You shouldn't post it on Facebook. That's not for public consumption. So I called her and I asked her, will you please take this down? Because you should not post somebody's house on Facebook. And if somebody posted your house on Facebook, I'd be calling them and
Mhm.
telling them to take it down. but you're the one that did it, so I want you to take it down. And she did. And she even complimented me. She said Mike Magnanti called me up in a very reasonable way and asked me if I would please take it down, and I did. And I'm happy to do that. And I had made a post on Facebook also that said you shouldn't do this. And then I thanked her on that post, and it was up for a couple of hours. And then I took that post down because it was no longer relevant. You see what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
when you're transparent and when you give clear and explicit direction, and when people understand exactly where you're coming from and they can trust you, this is what happens. I don't think she meant any harm. I don't think she did. I think she didn't think and didn't think of the consequences, what could possibly happen. And there are a lot of negative consequences that could have happened. People are getting very emotional.
Mhm.
And so it was good that we had that exchange. But why didn't our leadership do that? How come that wasn't done by our leadership? For me, I think that's where we are falling down, and that's where we need folks to say, "This is what's right. This is what's wrong. Let's do the thing that is right every time."
Mhm.
And I believe that I try to be the light of Christ in the room. I try my best to make sure that I am being objective, being reasonable and fair and honest. And so that's what I'm trying to do. That's what my campaign is about. It's about transparency, leadership, and changing the culture to a winning culture and a culture of honesty and forthrightness.
I love that. Just a disclaimer, I have not read the plan of organization yet. That's my project for this week. But I wanted to address some of the things that we've heard. Um, yeah,
Mhm.
I think it's important. What was
Well,
the
I
question?
encourage you to read it with the point of view of I'm voting yes for this,
Yeah,
because you'll find reasons to vote yes for it. You'll
absolutely.
also find reasons to vote no for it. Trust me when I tell you. And you know what you should do when you find those things that you find objectionable? You should write them down. Say, this is no good for me. And you should send them to me or send them to Dan Barry and say, hey, this is no good. Yeah. Does it have everything that I want? No. Did I have to compromise? Absolutely.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean that we're not going to take another run at it after the state convention. And where would we rather be as a party? Would we rather be this new iteration as our base and we get to fix the things that we don't like? Or would we rather be right back where we started? The reason why this amended version took place was because at last year's state convention, the committee chair said it is our intention to do a total reworking of the state plan of organization to get rid of all of the conflict. And he got a standing ovation. So when people say we don't need this, nobody wanted it, that's not true. That's not true. At the state convention last year, he got a standing ovation when he mentioned it. Do you know that the most transparent thing that the NCGOP has ever done has been this plan of organization committee? I fought for 6 months to get the committee to agree to post the draft online, which they did. It's been online since November. There's also a Google sheet where you can submit input. When have you ever heard of the NCGOP soliciting input from the rank and file? It's never happened. When have you ever heard of the NCGOP putting a draft, not the report, but a draft, what they're currently working on, online? It's been online for months. So when somebody says, "Well, I haven't had enough time to read the final draft," what are you talking about? It's been on there since November.
Hmm.
That's not my fault that you haven't looked at it. That's your fault.
Yeah.
So when people say, "Well, we have to be able to debate it," we've had 6 months to debate it, and we have been debating it, and we've solicited your input, want your input, but at this point, this iteration is better than what we're currently using, and so that's why we should pass this one because it's better. It's better for the state party, and it's better for the county parties. We've looked at every one of those comments. So there's people that say, I commented and you ignored me. Well, just because the comment that you put didn't make it to the draft, to the draft, that doesn't mean we ignored you. We didn't ignore you. We took all of those comments, we compiled all of them, and we went through every single one of those comments. Every one of them. Some of them, there's a lot of those comments. I would say half of them we kind of combined because they were essentially people saying the same thing.
Hmm.
But we reviewed every one of those comments, and a lot of them did make it in. A lot of them did. The reason why the affiliate groups are back on is because of the comments. So had that draft not been posted, right, the affiliate groups would not have known. We'd be going into convention, and they would have no lead time to formulate their argument. So we were as transparent as we could be,
Hmm.
literally as trans. The minutes are also there. Now, I've been told, I'm not the one posting the minutes, but I've been told there hasn't been any minutes updated since January, and I am against that. I want the minutes to be posted
Hmm.
immediately. Um, and and I'll contact Ed Stiles, our secretary, and ask him if he can get them online, because I want them to be posted.
Hmm.
I want them up there because I want people to be able to see who voted how and why. So anyway, that's, obviously I can go on and on and on.
So, regardless of who wins any position at the convention, we all have to make sure we still unite and back the NCGOP in their
Hmm.
endeavors. But at the beginning of May, President Trump posted on X an endorsement for, I guess, the incumbent, Jason Simmons. And he's running against Brooke McGowan. I think that's her name. Yes, Brooke
Hmm.
McGowan.
Hmm.
So, how do you feel about that? Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing in your eyes? What do you think? And do you think that will sway
Well,
the
I mean,
entire?
it doesn't.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, well, I think the before I interrupted you, I think you were going to say, do I think that will sway the
Yeah.
entire convention? Um, so here's my thoughts. So I like to try to look at things like most things, deserves context. So President Trump endorsed Jason Simmons on Truth Social, and if you look at the thread, I think there's 6 or 7 endorsements in a row. And if you read all of them, they're essentially the same. They say the same. They're very, very, they're essentially the same one. There's a couple of different words here and there, but they're essentially the same. Now, I'm not saying that President Trump didn't endorse Jason Simmons, but what I am saying is that at the exact same time that that came out, President Trump was in negotiations with China on tariffs. So I feel like he might have been preoccupied.
Yeah.
And the other thing is this: I believe that perhaps President Trump offered his endorsement of these people to support people in Congress so that they would be more comfortable with voting for the big beautiful bill. I think this might have been a trade-off. And I also think, I'm not saying President Trump didn't endorse him. That's not what I'm saying. But what I think may have happened, it might have been a case of he is in the middle of something, and somebody came in and said, "Mr. President, we got to endorse these 6 people," and he said, "Yeah, yeah, go ahead." I think that's probably closer to how it happened. It's not like there's a video of him with his arm around Jason where he is saying he is my man. That didn't happen. It's not happening. I think it came out a little bit early. That's another reason why I think he was preoccupied when he said, "Yeah, go ahead." Um, I think, uh, you know, I think Jason delivered North Carolina for President Trump essentially 3 times. And so why wouldn't he endorse him?
Hmm.
You know what I mean? But then let's think about, why would President Trump endorse him? How does it help President Trump? Because you got to think, he's a politician, whether he's a businessman or not, but he's a politician. So an endorsement like that, there's got to be, why? What's his motivation? So that's why I believe he might have been able to get some votes out of the deal, or made people feel more comfortable. you know the other thing is, because let's face it, when there is a change in leadership, change is always uncomfortable, and change is always abrupt, and so therefore most people don't like change, because they don't like to be uncomfortable, and they don't like being in an abrupt situation, so they don't like change. And if Jason is no longer the chair, there will be change, for sure there will be. And Jason is a good guy, and I'm not saying I couldn't work with him, and I see him all the time, and we're friendly, and I decided to run for vice chair because I believe that I have a unique ability to be the second banana. Not everybody can do that. A lot of people feel like they have to be the person in charge. I don't anymore. I did earlier in my life, but now I don't. Now I can be a very effective second, okay, to the chair. And I'll be a very effective second to the chair, whether it's Jason or whether it's Brooke. I think that both of them possess qualities that I don't have, and I think I possess qualities that both of them don't have. So it will be a great symbiotic relationship. So I'm not afraid if Jason wins, but I'm also not afraid to tell you the truth. Jason's been a weak leader. And this is not something that President Trump is going to get involved with. It's just not. Why is he going to attack Jason Simmons, the current leader? Why is he going to hobble him? I wish he would have stayed out of it. I think we have a couple of our congressmen that have stayed out of it, and they should. They should just stay out of it because it doesn't matter who the chair is. They're going to have to work with the chair, and the chair's going to support them. And do you really think President Trump cares that much? He's not running again.
Yeah.
That's it. This is his last. This is a swan song. He's not running again. So what's the difference for him? Doesn't matter for him. And do you think that the new chair is going to be work against President Trump? I mean, think about it. They're not going to do that. They're going to try their best. What we're trying to accomplish, we're trying to doge the North Carolina Republican Party. What is happening is this is Trump's party, and the elitists are refusing to let go because this is President Trump's party. And what did President Trump do? President Trump has embraced the rank and file. President Trump has embraced the voters. And frankly, that's what we're trying to do. What we're trying to say is President Trump is saying, and Elon Musk is saying, we need to be a more transparent government. The only thing that Doge can do is they can expose what they find. They can't do, they have no authority.
Mhm.
They have no authority to do anything. They can't fire one person. They can't adjust anybody's salary, nothing. All they can do is say they can take the best disinfectant, which is sunlight, and they can say, here's what's happening. And that's exactly what we want to do
Mhm.
for North Carolina. It's exactly what I want to do for North Carolina. So if you want to support President Trump, then your only option is to vote for me. Because I'm the one that's been saying the whole entire time, we need more transparency. We need more accountability. Are you really telling me that Doge is not about transparency and accountability? Are you saying that Dan Bishop isn't in the position he is because we want less accountability? Are you saying that President Trump is holding people less accountable? Look at the conversation that him and Vice President Vance had with Vladimir Zelensky. Wasn't that about accountability? Look at what he said yesterday with the president of South Africa. Wasn't that about accountability? So if that's what you're after, well, then I don't know what choice you have. It seems to me that you have one choice. You have a choice to support Brooke, and you have a choice to support me. That's it. Because Jason is not saying we have to be more transparent. He's not. He's not touching that. Because Gay Dillard at the my opponent at the Guilford Men's said she doesn't think we should post the chairman's salary. She thinks it should be private. Unfortunately for her, every single dollar we spend is public information. It's either on the NC the North Carolina Board of Elections report, or it's reported at the FEC. So how do we hold this information private? It's not private. But
Mhm.
this is the elitist point of view. The rank and file doesn't need to know. Well, I feel like I know what the rank and file thinks because I'm part of the rank and file. And I believe that it is vital, not only for our state, but for our country, that we change leadership at the North Carolina Republican Party. I believe it is vital that we have strong, bold, um, available, accountable leadership at the North Carolina Republican Party. If we don't, we lose in 2026. If we don't, we lose in 2028.
So thank you so much for talking to us. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to people before the convention?
I'd like to say if you want further information, you can go to mike4ncgop.com. That's Mike for FOR ncgop.com. You can send me an email. You can call me. You can send a carrier pigeon. I'm happy to talk. I look forward to convention. Trying to see if I can't work out maybe a question and answer period kind of breakout session. I'm going to try, and if I can't work that out, I'm just going to do it in the. I'm going to do it in the downstairs outside of the room. I'm just going to take questions right there. I don't know if you guys are podcasting from there, but that's I think that's important. I think we need to. Hey, look, before you vote, why don't you ask some questions? What's bothering you? What do you feel is important? And this is what I'll be honest and straightforward with you. Look, Jason's a great guy. It's not personal, but I think that what is at stake is the victories in 2026 and 2028. And I think because past performance is the best predictor of future performance, we already know how Jason is going to react.
Mhm.
And we already know how Jason is going to behave. And I think that what he has displayed has been weak leadership. And I think we can't afford that going forward. Now, that doesn't mean that if he wins, I'm going to say, well, I can't work with this guy. That's ridiculous. Of course I can work with him. He's great at a lot of stuff that I'm not good at. But I'm going to lead. I'm going to lead if I get elected.
Mhm.
That's what's going to happen. So we will see leadership at the NCGOP if I get elected, one way or another.
Awesome. Well,
And
thank you so much.
thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for your time. Yeah,
Thank you.